Today we're going to be looking over how I voiced a weaponsmith in the early free access game of Sands of Slumber, a tabletop RPG made in RPG Maker by SoCalAshez. Before we go into the video, I first have to say thank you guys so much for the love and appreciation on my first ever video posted how I voiced a drug dealer in Fallout 2. Obviously that was just a shot in the dark. I didn't even know if people would really, care about my voice, and to see the love and appreciation not just from people who know me, but also from Ramelime's fan base, also from the algorithm itself picking it up and putting it out there with featured videos such as Warlocracy. That was insane. And, of course, a shout out to Goat Boy from RLC Gaming Productions, who now makes thumbnail art, along with my other thumbnail artist, Pale Blood, who's also a composer, producer for me and various musics I do, and will probably be featured in the video as background music. It's amazing. Goat Boy and Pale Blood are amazing people, and I just kind of want to make like a little shout out thank you in advance. With that said, let's get right into the video. So before I get into how to voice a weaponsmith for a fantastical, amazing free-to-play RPG, which you should be playing if you want to know what I'm talking about here on the screen, free-to-play on Steam, no excuse, literally, it's not even that long, just play it. You'll have to be familiar with, obviously, the fantasy that is Sands of Slumber. So, you'll have to primarily learn of the lore. And thankfully, the game master who made the world that SoCalAshez developed the game for has a whole World Anvil account with all the various lores, laws, histories, so on and so forth, and deities. We're not going to cover all of that because that would be humongous. And if any of you guys out there are dungeon masters, D&D players, tabletop players of any kind, you're going to know really quickly how much work a DM, a game master, a dungeon master takes in order to create a really successful, compelling world for their players to have fun in. So, with that said, the lore is important for the video. It's not going to be like the last video of how I voice with Renesco at Fallout 2, because that was more of kind of like a retrospective. This is going to be full on an introduction, and also kind of more of a meta commentary about tabletop games, because the game, spoiler alert, for those who haven't played it, is actually super meta in its commentary and themes revolving tabletop roleplay. So with that in mind, if you haven't ever played a tabletop game, if you haven't ever roleplayed with someone, it could even be a LARP or whatever, you are going to be missing out a lot of context that you'd need from actually playing a tabletop roleplay or some way of roleplay. Which brings me to tip number 1, finally. Once you're familiar with the world of Tanavayak, which is not the world, that's just the continent that the game's based in, the actual world is called Telinium, play D&D. No, actually, play D&D. Specifically Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I know from the last video I did, specifically about how to voice villains in tabletop, I refrained from only specifying it to that system because of certain things, but it is quite literally a Dungeons & Dragons inspired game. And part of my worry when the OGL thing was a thing was actually because of how Sands of Slumber, even if it's not commercially profiting, it's a free-to-play game, could have been hit with that OGL fiasco. Thankfully, it did not happen, and thankfully, the amazing creators SoCalAshez, whenever they want, are going to pick the game right back up and continue the story. But, tangent aside, playing D&D, whether it be 5th edition or whatever, is going to give you a good feel because of how fantastical the races are, and even though it does a lot of good homebrew, like original races, it has the quality and perks of normal D&D. The mechanics in the RPG game is full-on D&D inspired, even from older modules where you had to worry about things like evasion and so on and so forth. Spells, keys when it comes to being a monk, being a rogue. These are various things. Sorcerers, for crying out loud. Find familiar. Like, these are mechanics from straight up spells that even I can see only having played 5th edition like a true zoomer. Which brings me to the second tip the meta humor. Now, this follows right after tip number 1 for a very important reason. Usually with my tips, I like to separate them into separate categories, but for this, it's kind of like a 1-2 punch. Tip number 2 is understanding the meta humor, because if you don't have these experiences from ever being at a tabletop, whether it be at like a physical setting, at like your local game store or whatever you play it at, or even over Discord or some other application online, you're not gonna get what is so funny about the game. I remember playing it just after I was accepted for the role of Urbane, and we just got all the voices attached to the game, like the recent patch. And as we were preparing to fully release it on Steam, I remember playing the demo, and I was just whiplashed by how the game wasn't trying to be taken seriously. It wasn't even really trying to set some tone. It was just simply trying to express a fun attitude with how a tabletop would be, with a nonchalant DM shooting the shit, making funny voices, and pretty much just making simple quests and goofy rewards, even goofy scenarios out of something that would want the players to take this world seriously, to want to have an immediate, deep emotional connection. But that's actually what makes the game so great, is that it averts expectations of what usual indie to even just studio approaches to high fantasy tries to do, and goes for a much more simpler, homey, chill, nonchalant vibe. The meta humor of even having certain NPCs be throwaway names, like the mysterious guy that you find in a cracked alleyway, to a simple adventurer's guild given by a guild tasker, or would it be a guild tasker? I don't even fucking know. A guild master that sends you through a hole in a pub to fight occultists that want to summon a sand golem beneath a bar, of all places, and then the way you even escape? That in itself should probably tell you the tone of what SoCalAshez wants to give you. SoCalAshez is not trying to make you believe the world. SoCalAshez is actually doing the opposite. It's almost pulling the veil in a Wizard of Oz kind of way to look at the man behind the curtain to say, hey, this is what a tabletop feels like. This is what it feels like in a more intimate, physical way, translated onto an RPG Maker free-to-play game. Which brings me to my third tip. Like that setting, like the vision of the entire game, the character you're going to be voicing, if you're ever in anything similar to this, is fantastical, silly, and on the nose with what they're doing and how they are to be presented. Urbane is not someone with like a lot of secrets or depth. He is just as he's written, a weaponsmith that, spoiler alert, has a hole in the carpet, and I guess employees just bursted under this catacomb labyrinth to the occultists. Maybe the occultists were the employees. I don't even know. But literally, there's a hole in his carpet that leads to a whole underground catacomb, which is also connected to the pub. And this guy just hasn't noticed this at all. And even worse, he's locked out of his own supply until the players intervene. I mean, come on. The voice that I'm going to be doing, you're going to get real quick. Okay, we're not going for super deep and serious. Which brings me to tip number 4.
Excuse me?
For the voice, you're going to want to think a couple of things all at once. Trust me. It's going to sound weird, but it's going to make a lot of sense when I do the voice. You're going to want to think kooky old man, dwarf, and pirate all at once. Trust me, because when speaking as Urbane the Weaponsmith, you're going to want to speak in the throat. Use some vocal weight and rasp. If you don't know what any of these are, especially terms like vocal weight, please refer to my video of how to voice villains in tabletop, because I have reference to videos by amazing talented voice actors with years of experience, more than me, linked, and also just go over a brief summary of the various things they do in order to get a leg up and also to have good techniques under their belt. So that said, I'm going to continue on, assuming that you just watched that and assuming you know these terms. For the in-the-throat vocal weight and rasp, you're going to try doing kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, or even like the grunge voice, you know. Or if you're trying to do the Saturday morning cartoon villain voice, the one that I can't really think the name of, but you know exactly when I do the voice.
Hello there, Power Rangers. This voice, right in the throat.
You're going to immediately catch on, okay, something to do with that. So if you could do
to then this, I think you're gonna get a good idea.
Now, pull from that technique of being in that throat with some rasp or whatever, and you're gonna want to pull from it into a raspy, piratey voice, a piratey tone, if you will. Move the jaw more when you're doing it, and the inflections of the "yari matey," you know, like just start moving your lips around, and you're gonna, but into that more raspiness. So we're gonna start from there. I'm gonna specifically do the cartoon voice. So,
hello, Power Rangers. We're gonna go from this to then this, and as you see, as I'm moving my jaw around, I'm still in the throat area, but I'm clearly using the rasp that I have in the parody tone. Just from doing this to then projecting into a thought of a pirate voice. So, once you go from this to then this, just by jolting up your voice a bit, Sally, you're gonna want to relax the piratyness to then more of a calm, hard-working, blue-collar employee, or employer, rather, a businessman. And as you think of a businessman, you're gonna think of kooky old man. And then eventually, combining pirate and kooky old man, you're gonna get the face of a very heavily bearded man. Note, the NPC does not have a beard, it just has a helmet over their head, so it doesn't matter. But, imagine bearded man, for the sake of the voice. Dwarf, right? You're gonna realize it's a dwarf. That's what it feels and sounds like when you do kooky old man from this raspy tone, piratey-like, but not even too piratey, just enough. Hi, I'm here to hit the anvil and forge you an axe. Dwarf, without the obvious shitty Scottish, Irish accent appropriation. Now, the final thing you're gonna want to do is now go deep. You know, this voice, you're gonna go a little deep. Now, I know you're probably thinking, why is this so complicated? Well, it's because for the demonstration of how to do the proper voice for Urbane, you're gonna want, looking to buy some armor? Well, you can't. Been cut off from my supply to make weapons armor, so I don't have anything for sale. Well, as you can see, you're gonna want to go from the throat to then the piratey tone, and then have the weight calm it down. And as you can see it all meshed together, I cannot tell you how to do the voice other than kooky old man, dwarf, and a pirate? How in the... Last thing, I promise. You get all of this mapped in your face, don't you? Moving the jaw around. Having your face go from raspy in the throat to the pirates to then calm it down with vocal weight. Now, from the chest. I know, this is a lot. I don't even know how I'm doing it. All I can say, for that extra grit that you can hear in my voice, I am pulling straight from the core of my stomach, which makes me feel like I'm constipated.
So, after all that stuff, hopefully that's helpful. I know it can be a bit confusing, and honestly, if you want me to be real, it's been a long time ago since I've done that voice. So it was kind of like a learning process to relearn the voice to teach you how to do the voice. Teacher, student, something, thoughtful statement, I have none. That said, to understand the role you're voicing, it helps to have a brief summary of the world, which I promised. Thankfully, the early release of the game has such in its tutorial stage with the various gods, eras, and histories. Without further ado, here's an excerpt. The universe of Telenium has gone through numerous changes, each one compounding on one another. Since the beginning, the world rose with nations of creatures growing in power until some cataclysm came down to destroy them entirely, restarting it. Each of these ages are referred to collectively as cycles, and every cycle is a unique existence. As the cycles have come and gone, the most modern of nations dig up the skeletons of the previous ones, standing on the remains of the shoulders of these giants. These nations reflect this, often becoming strange and unrecognizable to the people of the past. Far into the future, these nations become almost unrecognizable to any people of said past.
Where'd you come from?
Like you don't know. Where did you think this rope in here led to?
What? There was a rope under the carpet in there? My father always told me to never trust a free carpet from new employees who go missing after the first week.
So who is Urbane the Weaponsmith from the Sands of Slumber RPG? He is a kooky man that is very incompetent at running a business, and you quite simply just find him through a hole under his carpet in his closet that has conveniently all of his weapons and armor, so he couldn't really sell you. And I think, if I'm correct, the last time I played, the only thing he really sells you is caltrops. Nothing really thoughtful, just that. The end slide is here. Here are all the lovely people who have made the music in the background. Obviously, as in the video, special shout out to SoCalAshez for giving me this role and for having me a part of their amazing creative journey with the early access release. And also special shout out to their DM for creating the world. It is quite an amazing world that he has conjured from their mind. And as always, Ramble Lime, I love you. It's been Crimson Gray. I hope you guys have had a great day.